Hi, I'm Chadwick Myers, and I'm here to give my introduction to beer seminar. Beer is a wonderful thing, I'm sure you all agree, and there's a lot of ingredients that go into it in different styles, and I hope to give a good overview about the different types of beer and the flavors. So, if everyone can introduce themselves.
Kevin.
Jackie.
Bones.
Judy. Lisa.
Kevin.
Matt.
All right. Now, what is beer? Well, beer is a fermented beverage made from grain. The active ingredient in beer is the yeast. Just like making bread, to make beer, you have yeast, and it eats the sugars that are in the grains. And it's a similar process to making wine, but wine's made from fruit instead of grain. There's two major classifications of beer, and that's determined by the type of yeast. The first type that most people are more common with is a lager. Lagers are what most of your common American domestic beers are, and it ferments at a cold temperature, usually about 40 or 50 degrees, and it provides a nice, clean, crisp finish to it. So if everyone wants to come take a sample of the first row. And this is provided by Legend Brewery. It's their American lager. I'm sure everyone can tell there's a nice, clean, crisp finish to it. Good for a hot summer day. Then the other classification of yeast is for ales. Ales typically ferment at a warmer temperature, about 60 to 70 degrees. Ales are an older style of beer. It goes back many centuries, and it has a little bit more of a hearty flavor to it. And that'll bring us to our second sample. So if everyone come up, take a second sample. And this is a Foster's Ale provided by Foster's Brewery in Australia.
Here, Kevin.
So go ahead and taste. And even though similar in ingredients between the ale and the lager, probably find the ale has a little bit heartier feel to it. Okay, and we mentioned that grain is what provides the body of the beer. Here's a selection of cracked malted grains. That's what's used to provide the food, the body for the beer. Pass it around, everyone can take a look at it. That one's actually a mixture of grains. Typically, the most commonly used malted grain is barley, but you may also find wheat or rice or rye, but most commonly barley. And there are different types of barley. And beers that are usually darker in color, that's from toasting the grains a little bit darker. The grains are toasted before they're put into the brew pot, exposed to hot water, and that kind of almost burning them what gives a dark beer its color. So, as an example of a beer that has a very pronounced malt flavor to it, nice toasted grains, is a porter style beer. This one also from Legend Brewery here locally. So if everyone would like to come take a sample of the porter. Definitely has a richness to it. You can taste the caramelization. Definitely more robust. It's heavy on the grains. And it may be a little different from if you're normally used to drinking American domestics. It is definitely a more robust, full flavor. And that's provided by the heavy use of toasted malted grains. And that brings us into our other ingredient, hops. Hops is a vine-growing plant that produces little flowers. These little flowers is what goes into beer to give that bitter flavor. And that helps balance out the sweetness of the malted grains. There are many different varieties of hops, slightly different flavors, some a little herbal, some a little more bitter tasting. You can definitely adjust beer flavor by how you hop it. And they get boiled into the water and the grains as you're brewing the beer. So just pass around, everyone take a look at it. Then for the home brewer, you can buy hops in a pelletized form. Makes for easy measuring and adding to your brew pot. So that's what it looks like in a processed form. And my example of beer with a strong hop flavor is my own home brew, one I made. It's a ESB, that's an extra special bitter. And if everyone come up and take a sample. And this one, you'll definitely taste that kind of herbal, a little bit of bitter bite to it. And that is the hops. So, I hope everyone's found it to be informative about the types of beer, and there's certainly many more types of beer, and we could go into an hours-long discussion on this, but I hope this gives just a kind of simple overview. Does anyone have any questions, comments, any particular beer that really struck you as being different, or?
The hops.
Mhm.
Where does that name come from? I heard you distinguish it as called hops, but then you also said that as you hop it. So
Right, it can be used as a noun or a verb.
okay.
The noun is a hops, and then a lot more information in the book here, all about home growing your own hops. I have some my own hops plants growing. That's where I cut it. It's a vine growing plant, climbs up things. It's supposed to be in the same family as cannabis, just no THC, so you won't get high off it.
Right.
But yeah, it's been used for several centuries, starting over Europe. They found it helped balance out the beer and also helped the beer preserve longer, so you can store it a little bit longer.
And you talked about cooking the hops longer to make the beer darker for the darker flavor, so you can almost equate it to a coffee bean.
Well, it was the grains that you cook to it darker to make the beer darker.
Oh, okay.
The hops, the longer you cook it, the more the bitter acids it'll fuse. Like one brand of beer with a very strong hop flavor you might see at the store is a Doghead IPA 90 minute. And that means they boil the hops for an hour and a half to really get that full infusion of the bitter acids.
Gotcha.
Somebody else had a question?
Yeah, how long does it take to grow the hops?
Probably a couple of years till you really get a usable crop. I mean, each year you cut it down at the ground. After the end of the season, it grows a whole big. I mean, you grow up 15 feet in one growing season, spring, summer.
And
It's very fast growing.
To make your own beer, but how long does that process
From
take?
the time you start it till it's ready to drink, about a month. And a lot of it's just waiting processes, because you might, be a couple hours just doing your initial brewing, and then it goes into a container where the yeast starts eating on the grains and gives off carbon dioxide, makes alcohol, and you have to go through several steps of that, and finally bottling. It has to sit a couple weeks in the bottle, so about a month.
Very good.
All right, that's all. I'd like to thank everyone for participation.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Very good.
Good job.